Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Switch Statement Podcast. It's a podcast for investigations into miscellaneous tech topics.
This is our 11th episode on Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. We'd love to hear from you. Send your comments and feedback to team@thkp.co.
Hey, John. How you doing?
Matt, how are you? I'm doing good. Sorry, that was reversed.
That's okay, you know. We got to shake things up every once in a while. Keep the listeners on their toes.
That's our version of a shake-up.
Yeah,
Just
I know.
Reverse the order of simple statements.
We should just have a podcast. We say the exact same words. Like, we record new copies of it, but it's kind of like an art piece.
I do feel the way we converse is so sort of uniform that I feel like at this point we could just be AI generating our podcast.
Honestly, that might be a tremendous efficiency improvement.
It might sound better too, frankly.
So, talking about Elon.
Talking Musk. And it's all about getting to Mars.
Yes, everything is to get to Mars.
My first note as well, he has this Mars colonizer meeting that he's like excited to go to every week.
Dude, I would be excited about that.
Yeah.
Is there a public Mars colonization meeting that I could attend?
I think I would be a good candidate to go to Mars.
Oh, really?
Stable. I think. Well, I mean, I have no.
You're saying from an emotional,
yeah,
psychological perspective?
Just my disposition. Like, I feel like I can sit in a cramped space for like 5 years and not talk to people, and I'm fine.
Dude, have you ever heard about that Biosphere 2 experiment?
There's like stuff you should know that's pretty awesome about that.
Yeah. Dude, I've always wanted to do something like that where you just get holed up. It also sounded like an unbelievable... That thing was enormous. You know, the compound that they were in was enormous.
It had trees in it, right? Like a whole little forest.
Yeah, there was like a whole isolated ecosystem. I mean, that kind of turned out to be a big problem, right? Because they weren't like getting enough nitrogen or something. I don't know. The air quality was weird because it was supposed to be completely self-contained.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and this is one point I wanted to make is like, I think that they're describing this superpower, which is you have this long-term vision and you're consistently reminding yourself of the long-term vision over a long period of time. You can do all of these things to prepare for that ultimate long-term vision that, like, you know, if you only started to think about them once you were kind of ready to do that, like, you would never be able to solve those problems.
Yeah. It's weird because in a way he has been incrementally getting to Mars.
Right.
And I do wonder if he's still like on this track.
I have no reason to believe that he's not.
I mean, I hope he is. I hope he sort of gets back to some of the qualities that people used to appreciate in him. But anyway, like, just to take a step back, like what we're referring to is Starlink.
Right.
This internet service that he devises. He realizes the internet, obviously massive business. And so he says, where's my wheelhouse? Putting stuff in space. Let's create a satellite internet company called Starlink. And so it's all about getting to Mars. It's about funding his adventure to Mars and also gaining more competency, you know, dealing with putting stuff in orbit and getting to space in general. So it's kind of combining all of these core competencies that he and his people have, but making a bunch of money.
But I think they kind of went the other way because they're like, okay, we need to go to Mars. We have a solution to problems. How can we turn this solution into money that we can then use to go to Mars? And he said if we can capture, 3% of all of the money flowing through the internet, then that's $30 billion, and it's more than NASA's budget. So that's kind of how he plans on, at least, you know, in the near term, making this economically viable.
Yeah, and he does this typical Musk escapades where they initially have these satellites, you know, the internet satellites, but they're expensive, they're big. So he brings this guy in, Mark Juncosa, who I feel like we've talked about Mark Juncosa before.
I think we talked about him. He was a SpaceX engineer.
Okay, yeah, so he's been around. He's sort of been, you know, within Musk's orbit, so to speak. And he's also this cool sounding dude, a surfer. He says, you know, all the time and sort of like speaks with like a stereotypical surfer vibe, which I love, by the way. He's kind of an engineer's engineer, like really taking Musk's algorithm to heart and sort of enacting that algorithm on this satellite, making it much simpler. There's a little anecdote about the satellite used to be like multiple modules, I guess, that were like combined. And I think Musk was the one who suggested, like, can we make it one single module? But he was sort of the guy that like made this happen. And I guess they did other improvements. Like the one other one that I thought was cool was, I guess they had this, like, I didn't really understand this, but they had something that held the satellites together within the spaceship. Like, spaceship would go up, launch these satellites, and then they would sort of come apart and like spread out and become this huge, vast net over the Earth so that you could have uninterrupted internet service. They got rid of the thing holding these satellites together. So they were just kind of like bouncing around in there, freely. But then when they unleashed them, they just sort of spread out on their own, and it just wasn't a big deal. So they were able to kind of do all this cost cutting by getting rid of these things.
It is crazy to me because all of these people on these teams are extremely talented individuals.
Yeah.
Those satellite engineers, those original satellite engineers, like, they probably had a tremendous amount of expertise in their domain.
Right.
And it's just crazy to me that these guys that don't have specific satellite expertise can come in, Junkosa and Musk, and they can just waltz in and make it an order of magnitude smaller and easier to manufacture. It's like they're holding themselves back. You know what I mean? There's nothing that would stop them from doing the same thing. Although I guess there's the problem because they probably don't have as much autonomy to waltz in and change fundamental things about the design.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because I have definitely been in rooms full of brilliant engineers where we're all staring at the same crappy product. And everyone says, oh, this is a piece of crap. And everyone probably has a great idea on how to fix it. And their ideas will probably all work. But there's just no single person that can be like, let's do this idea and laser focus on it, and everyone else is fired. Laser focusing on a single idea is just really hard to do in some organizations. But it seems to be a theme in his organizations. And I think it does come with a cost that we can sort of talk about later, maybe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we see a lot of that cost coming back again and again in these chapters.
I was just going to say this chapter ends with a cool tidbit about him tweeting. But the tweet was basically from space.
His own internet.
I mean, that is a flex of epic proportions.
So next chapter is the first time we hear about the Starship.
The BFR.
The BFR. Yeah, he announced as BFR.
But the listener can puzzle out what BFR means.
Yeah, September 2017, this was the first announcement of the BFR. And then a year later, he renamed it to the much more family-friendly Starship. But yeah, I mean, he's all about stainless steel. I mean, I guess he was enchanted when they were working on the Cybertruck. And he's like, all right, let's do it again.
Like him and stainless steel needed to get a room.
So in this section, they have this interesting anecdote where they do some testing. They like try to make this thing with stainless steel, and it works really well. And then immediately he jumps to this like, okay, burn the bones mentality. And he's like, all right, we're going to cancel Falcon Heavy, which I don't even know. We haven't really talked about Falcon Heavy in this podcast, or have we even talked about it in the book?
I thought we did talk about, was Falcon Heavy the one that, oh, no,
With
maybe we just talked about Falcon.
Yeah, we definitely talked about Falcon 9.
Okay, yeah, Falcon 9 with the 9 Merlin engines.
The 9 Merlin engines. Falcon Heavy was basically, they were like, all right, we're just going to slap 2 Falcon 9 boosters to the left and right of this central core.
Yeah.
I mean, that has kind of faded into obscurity. They didn't completely kill it, but basically they're like, we're just going to stop development on this altogether because we're going to have Super Heavy.
I think you're right. So that sort of took place, within the cracks.
In this little anecdote, he calls Gwyn Shotwell and he's like, all right, cancel this project. Like, we need to stop it altogether. And she's like, listen, we have these crucial NASA contracts that we cannot abandon. Gwyn Shotwell seems to be the one person in the world that can make him retreat from his position.
Totally. It's like Gwyn Shotwell is the alpha of this book.
Yeah, I mean, her and Kimball, I feel like, are real amazing. But there was one point I wanted to look up, like, where Burn the Boats came from. Do you know where this, or like allegedly where the original?
I feel like this was like they wanted to make sure there was no way for their army to get back home.
Yeah.
Because they wanted, I remember this story. I don't remember the exact origin, though.
The original written description of this was from The Art of War, which was 500 BC-ish.
I was just going to say, I have an Art of War quote on my whiteboard. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat.
Whoa. Oh, interesting. Okay. So they definitely prefer strategy.
Well, I think you need a mix of both. But
Yeah.
I think the primary takeaway is if you're only focused on tactics, it's the noise before defeat. Like you need
Yeah.
some semblance of a strategy. It's funny because I feel like the whole thrust of the quote is like you need a balanced approach.
You need both. Yeah, definitely. That's what the point that they're trying to come across. But I mean, I don't know. Victory is still victory. You know, obviously you don't want it to take longer, but...
But I feel like I interrupted you with the burning of the boats.
No, I mean, that was all... I remembered that was something from history, and I wasn't sure if it came from... Like, there were some examples where they did do this, where they actually burned the boats, but I think the concept was first expressed. And he was basically just like, yeah, you should, so that people aren't thinking too hard about them getting back home.
It's a good motivator, knowing you'll die if you don't succeed.
Right.
But yeah, they talk about this Boca Chica place, which sort of became a base for this Starship. And I don't know, there's a couple of funny parts where they talk about Musk sort of returning to humble roots.
Yeah.
It comes up a little bit later in another chapter, but they mention that he has this really humble home in Boca Chica. It's like a 2-bedroom or something. And that's where that's sort of his base of operations while he's working on Starship. Yeah,
I do. I definitely want to touch on this more in the subsequent chapter, but it is interesting to see his like transition from, you know, just living these extremely lavish lifestyles, and then he kind of like pairs down at a certain point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, Starbase, that's really where all the action is happening today, is my understanding. They basically start buying up all this land in Texas, and then they're hiring like basically everyone around. Either their house gets bought up and they leave, or they're being hired by Elon Musk to work around the clock. And there's a few stories about this, and I don't know exactly which chapters that I want to talk about where he's
he calls people on Friday night and he's like, why aren't you at the office?
Yeah.
Bro, it's Friday night and I have kids.
He keeps on doing this where he's like, this is unacceptable. It's 1 a.m. There's only 2 people working.
I would find it so pathetic if a manager reached out to me in that way. Like,
I would just insta quit. I would literally just instantly quit.
It's just such an invasion of like an appropriate work-life balance. Musk would argue that work-life balance is a myth and shouldn't be adhered to, but yeah, he's wrong. We transition to Tesla. So as always in this book, we're bouncing back and forth between all of these like massive undertakings that Musk is doing. Tesla is sort of in an interesting state. I guess it's kind of faltering. And so Musk, dude, I have done this so many times where I say Tesla instead of Musk.
I think the hard thing is Tesla is a name. It is a last name.
Thank you. You made me feel a little better. But anyway.
We should do a book on Tesla next.
Oh, God.
That might be even more confusing. You might start calling him Musk.
I bet Tesla is a figure that I personally would respect a lot more. So that would be interesting. Because in a way, like I'm hate reading some of this, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like the scenes where he's like firing some poor lowly engineer. I'm just like, ugh, what an asshole.
Yeah.
But in any case, he decides he needs to sort of inject some enthusiasm into Tesla. And he goes back to his common refrain, which is autonomy. Mm-hmm. And he does this thing called Autonomy Day. And I sort of like, the author at one point refers to full autonomy as a receding mirage, which I thought was just a cool way to refer to it, especially back in like 2020. Like that's really how it felt. But Musk does his typical thing where he like wants to fire everyone. There's a little note where his cousin, I guess, worked at Tesla, James Musk.
Yeah.
And his cousin was put in charge of detecting traffic lights. It just seemed weird that they hadn't already done this, or I don't know. It just seemed like this weird moment where I'm like, what? Like this one dude is in charge of traffic lights? Anyway, they sort of put all of this effort behind reaching this Autonomy Day. But by the time Autonomy Day rolls around, really doesn't work out. Musk like severely pulled back on his goals. Like his original goal was that the thing would drive around in a city for some amount of time, but he sort of pulled it back and said, oh, it's got to make 3 turns on the freeway or something. So he basically changed the goalposts and made it way easier. But even with that, it didn't really turn out that well.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the many instances where Musk shows his weakness, which is he just has this like underlying belief that problems are simple. And he's always sort of like, oh, you just need to like focus on this one thing and it'll just work. And there's certain types of problems where that's just wrong.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he gets vindicated a lot. Like one industry that I would think you would have to be very slow and very analytical and sort of dot your I's and cross your T's is rocketry.
Right.
Is putting stuff in space.
It's kind of funny because it's almost like actually the commercial car industry, it's a harder problem in a way,
Yeah, it is funny. You just need a stainless steel shell and like 30 rockets behind it.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I thought this chapter was an interesting case. And there's a few chapters in the book that are like this where it sort of shows that there's a certain lack of nuance to his thinking sometimes. And I think he can kind of trick himself into believing something that's just sort of clearly not true to people around him. But I guess that's just part of the Musk package. It works out sometimes, and sometimes it really doesn't work.
Yeah. So we have the odd criticism from Walter Isaacson at the end of this, where he talks about the fact that Musk is saying, oh, there's going to be 1 million robotaxis within a year or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, obviously, these analysts are super skeptical of this. And he said this skepticism was warranted. A year later, and indeed 4 years later, there would not be 1 million Tesla robotaxis, or even one of them driving autonomously on city streets.
Amazing. We move on to Giga Texas. He has this Fremont factory churning out, 5,000 Teslas per week?
Yes, I mean, that was the white whale from, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before.
Right. But Tesla's doing really, really well during this period, and they need to be churning out even more cars per week. Mm-hmm. So they, spend a lot of time looking for a place for a new home base. There's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of just gut instinct involved, I guess. And they eventually land on Austin, Texas. And they build this crazy building, Giga Texas. This, briefly became kind of a famous building. 50% more floor space than the Pentagon.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's completely wild. I had one anecdote from this chapter that I thought was amazing. And it's about this Giga Press.
Yes, I'm glad you're talking about this. I loved this story.
Yeah, I thought this was just so cool. And sort of an instance where, Musk can be really cool sometimes. He has really cool ideas. But I guess he was like playing with a toy car. And a lot of times toy cars will just sort of have this injection molded base. And then they put like a plastic shell on top of it. And so he goes to some meeting and he's like, why can't we do this? And of course, everyone is initially skeptical. They're like, we're operating at a different scale. You can't just injection mold an entire chassis of a car. Injection molding was typically reserved for much smaller things. But Musk, as always, he questions this. And they reach out to all these companies that do this type of molding. And one of them, an Italian company, is like, sure, we can try this out. And I guess this is how they make Tesla Ys now. And it is injection molding, right?
Well, it's interesting because they call it the Giga Press. So it says the machines inject bursts of molten aluminum into a cold casting mold. So yeah, I mean, I guess it is die cast. But I don't know why they would call it a press then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was the right term. But in any case, yes, they have this massive mold as big as a car. They said the weight at one point, it was like 5,000 tons or something absurd.
Yeah, 6,000 tons. And then for the Cybertruck, it's 9,000 tons.
It's amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure we covered that anecdote because he's literally making cars like they make toys. And there's even a tidbit in the chapter where he talks about toy companies do things in an amazing way. Like, he talks about Lego making each Lego is within like 3 microns.
10 microns.
Yeah, like a plank length of the next. They're just like absurdly good at this consistency. And he's like, why can't we do that with cars? And it turns out you can.
He has this quote that really caught my eye. He said, "Precision is not expensive. You just have to care. It's mostly about caring. Do you care to make it precise? Then you can make it precise." In engineering, precision is kind of one of the big contributors to the cost of a particular part. If you want to make it with super tiny tolerances, that will drive up the price a tremendous amount. So,
Yeah.
not sure I agree with him. Although I do go along with Musk on his like, okay, the best part is no part. And if
Yes.
you can make something out of one big piece of metal that was previously 100 parts that had to be welded and riveted and bonded together, that's obviously way better because there's just fewer points of failure.
Exactly. So this seems like a massive sort of innovation in the manufacture of these cars. So maybe we can cover this family life chapter, and that might be a good place to close on. So this, family life chapter, do you know how to say this name?
I think when they really want to say it, they just say X. I don't know if it's supposed to be pronounced.
So do you pronounce the ligature thing, the weird AE character?
Yeah, apparently it was pronounced Ash. So I don't know if it's supposed to be like Zash. Zashai.
Zashai 12?
Jaxi. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, he has a kid with a dumb name. He does some typical Musk stuff. Like, I guess Grimes has to get a C-section, and he just takes a photo of this. And I don't know. It's just such an obvious like invasion of, privacy. He takes a photo of Grimes getting a C-section and like sends it to a bunch of friends and family and stuff. Like, Can you imagine?
No.
Like, I'm often pretty tone deaf.
The other thing that's funny is this his 20th, 30th child at this point? Like, surely he must have a sense for the cultural norms there.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, and then they talk about his kids in this chapter. And, I think Isaacson keeps the talk on Musk's kids pretty minimal, which is probably a good thing. But his kids seem pretty awesome for the most part.
Yeah.
I think there was one kid named Damien who's like basically a music prodigy and also very high performing in school. I can't remember the other kid's name, but
Damien and Kai were twins. And actually they were triplets. So it was Saxon, who was not, they weren't identical triplets. So it was one pair of identical twins and then a third triplet who was not identical.
That can happen?
I mean, I think if you think about, right, so an identical twin is a single fertilized egg that splits into two, and then they both implant separately, and then they grow into two separate babies. So you could imagine having like a quadruplet where there's one set of triplets that are identical, and then another. It's really about like implantations, and then for each implantation, that can kind of like spontaneously become, bifurcate.
Identical twins. I didn't realize you could have 3 kids all at the same time, 2 of them identical, one of them fraternal. Is that even the right? Is that the right term? Fraternal?
Fraternal, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the wrong term, but in any case,
it's just more of the male default in our society.
Yeah. But yeah, his kids seem totally awesome. There is one sad note, and I feel like this became a little bit more public after the book. He does have a kid named Xavier, who he basically has a falling out with this kid. Xavier gets a sex change without telling Musk. In fact, he tells other people in the family, and he specifically tells them to keep it a secret from Musk, which is kind of depressing. Musk makes a couple horrible statements on Twitter about trans issues and gender pronouns and things like that.
There's definitely the trans issue, but Xavier seems to kind of gone down this very extreme kind of left-leaning path where essentially they've adopted, and I guess it's she, and now it's because now they're Jenna, but Jenna has this worldview where to be rich is a bad thing in itself, and
right.
She eschews like worldly possessions, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where this seemed to be at least part of the impetus for Elon to give up all of his lavish lifestyles and then move into some tiny shack in Boca Chica.
Because he had multiple tens of millions of dollar homes across the world, basically. He had several homes in different states, and I don't know about countries, but anyway, he had many, many homes. So yeah, he sold them all. He bragged about having no possessions. But then there is an anecdote about him almost buying like a $60 million house.
Yeah.
But that falls through because the seller starts asking for more money, and he's like, no, I'm now abstemious. And so he tells them he doesn't want to buy. I found it to be ridiculous because you know that he's living well,
Yeah.
but he's sort of giving off this monkish aura, which I'm assuming is not earned.
I do think there's a kind of first principles basis for this where it's actually just an unproductive way to leverage money. He could be putting that into one of his businesses and getting to Mars faster, which is something that's always so funny to me. Is it's unclear to me why the market doesn't make that happen, where it's like, yeah, it would be obviously better to pay your executives less, right? Like, why isn't there competition there to suppress those wages?
That is a great question, but I do think the era of these super well-paid CEOs may come to an end soon.
Oh.
Because I think AIs are going to be better CEOs than.
So are you saying that there'll be a new company that's run by an AI CEO, and then that company is just going to outcompete other companies, and then it's going to be survival of the fittest, and those old companies are going to be extinguished?
I think that CEOs will use AIs more and more for decision making.
Okay.
Because AIs are incredibly good at this. They're incredibly good at looking at a very, very high level picture and coming up with a series of decisions that need to get made. Like, that's one of their primary strengths. So CEOs will use the AIs at first, but then people will realize, like, hey, the AI is just doing all the work. Like, why don't we fire the CEO?
What are we paying
million? So it's just a simple matter of economics. Like, we get the exact same performance and save $200 million a year.
Well, right, exactly.
People talk about which jobs are going to get sort of subsumed by AI. And I actually think CEO is higher on the list than most people think.
Well, maybe we leave it with that thinker. Will CEO be the first job to be completely subsumed by AI?
Yeah, seems like a reasonable place to leave it.
All right. Well, I will see you next time, John.
See you next time, Matt.